This video is all about the inheritance of human ABO blood types. So before we get to how it's inherited and we get into some problems on solving what type of blood you can expect from certain parents, certain offspring, let's just review what the ABO blood typing system is. Here I've drawn 4 different red blood cells. The first one here would be type A blood because it has on the surface of the cell A proteins. Obviously, if there are B proteins, that would be type B blood. For AB blood, you would have both A proteins, or A antigens, and B antigens on the surface of the cell. And commonly misunderstood here, when there is neither A nor B antigens, we call that O-type blood. There's no such thing as an O antigen. Okay, it's not that there are O antigens on the surface of the blood cell. It's an absence of A or B antigens. So that's how the blood typing system works. But let's take a look at how it's inherited. This is a fairly complicated mechanism of inheritance because it deals with a concept called multiple alleles. Multiple alleles refers to traits that are inherited due to more than 2 different versions of a gene. When it comes to human blood types, there are 3 different versions. There is the allele big IA, which is responsible for producing A antigens and creates type A blood. There is big IB, which is responsible for producing B antigens. And there is a third allele, little I, which produces no antigens and is responsible for type O blood. Now, the reason we call this multiple alleles is that any particular individual can possess any combination of 2 of these alleles. You could possess a big IA and a big IB, you could have a big IA and a little I, you could have 2 little I's, you could have any combination of 2 of these. And in order to figure out the blood type, we have to know, well, what's dominant over what. And as it turns out, when it comes to human blood types, type A and B are co-dominant. And what that means is if an individual possesses a big IA and a big IB, they're going to make both A proteins and B proteins and would have type AB blood. So this type of blood right here could be represented by the genotype big IA, big IB. Now, little I is recessive, and it's recessive to both big IA and big IB. Which means if we wanted to find out the genotype of a type O person, well, they would have to have the genotype little I, little I. They'd have to have 2 recessive alleles to not have either the A protein or the B protein on the surface of the cells. Things get a little more complicated for A and B type blood because there are 2 different genotypes that could produce type A blood. First of all, you could be homozygous for type A. That would be big IA, big IA. You could possess 2 big IAs, and that means you would produce A proteins on the surface of your blood cell. But you could also have the genotype big IA, little I. That would also produce A proteins on the blood cell. The I wouldn't produce any proteins on the blood cell, so you'd just be type A. Same thing would be true for type B. Homozygous big IB would produce type B blood, or big IB, little I could produce type B blood. The important thing here is that any one individual has to have 2 alleles for blood type. There are 3 possible choices, big IA, big IB, or little I, but an individual can only possess 2 of those at any given time. So let's take a look at some fairly straightforward scenarios of some genetic crosses involving blood types. Let's say that we have a man who is type O and a woman who is type B, and we're going to assume that she is heterozygous. So if we cross these 2 individuals, the question we might ask is what could be the possible blood types of their children? So for the man and the woman, we'll call that our T generation. The man is type O blood. There's only one genotype that can result in type O blood. That would be little I, little I. The female, the woman, is type B, and it says that she's heterozygous. Well, she's got to have a big IB to have type B blood. To be heterozygous means she must have a little I. Now, she could be heterozygous if she had big IA, big IB. This would also be a heterozygous blood type, but that would result in AB blood, and she doesn't have AB blood. She has B type blood, so we know her genotype is big IB, little I. When we do a cross with this to find our offspring, that's our F1 generation, we do the same thing we do with all Punnett squares. We separate the alleles when we're building our Punnett square. So we separate the alleles for the man, who's type O, so he could have half of his sperm with a little I, and the other half of his sperm with a little I. In other words, all of his sperm will be little I. For the female, her ova, well, half of them are going to have a big IB, and half of them are going to have a little I. So when we complete this Punnett square, there is a possibility of having a child with type B blood. And here's another one, type B blood. Here we have type O, and here we would have type O. In other words, of 4 possible offspring, 2 would be type B, and 2 would be type O. If we were to express this as a phenotypic ratio, we would express it instead of 2 to 2, 2 of each type, we reduce that down to 1 to 1. So we would have 1 type B to 1 type O. All right, so that's pretty straightforward examples. Let's take a look at some from diploma exam style questions. Here we've got an interesting one. 4 babies were born in a hospital on the same day. Due to a mix-up at the hospital, and don't worry about that, hospital mix-ups don't happen, there was some confusion as to the identity of the babies. So we've got 4 sets of parents, we've got their blood types, and what we're being asked is which of these parents could have a baby with type O blood. So what we're going to need to do is look at all of our different parents and see if type O is even possible. So we're just going to go through each set of parents. We'll call this parent 1. We've got a mother who is type A. So the mother is type A, is big IA something. Now, what we know is that's not a big IB because she's not type B, but it could be a big IA or it could be a little I. We don't know which based on her blood type, so I'm just going to leave that second allele as blank. For the father, he has type O, which means he's going to be little I, little I. So the question is it possible for these parents to have a child with type O blood? And the answer is yes, it is possible for them to have a child with type O blood, as long as that's a little I. And since we don't know that it's not a little I, it could be a little I, and therefore the first set of parents could have a child with type O blood. Let's look at the second set of parents. We've got a mother who's type AB, so she must have a big IA and a big IB. And we have a father who's type B, so he must have a big IB, and we don't know if that's another big IB or if that's a little I. In this scenario, it doesn't really matter, because in order for a child to have type O blood, the child would have to have 2 little I's. Well, the mother doesn't have a little I to give. The mother's got a big IA and a big IB, which means this set of parents could not have a child that's little I, little I. So let's look at the third set of parents. Third set of parents, we have the same situation for the mother, big IA, big IB, she's type AB blood, so we know it doesn't even matter what the father is, we'll write out his, he's little I, because he's type O, but it doesn't matter. The mother has no little I to give to her child, therefore can't have a baby that's little I, little I. Let's look at the fourth set of parents. Fourth set of parents, the mother is type O, so she is little I, little I. The father is type B, so he is big IB, and then either a big IB or a little I. We don't know, but what we need to find out here is it possible for him to have a little I? And yes, it is possible. If he does have a little I, then the mother's going to give a little I in the egg. Fathers could give a little I in the sperm, which means it is possible that parent 4, the combination there, could produce a child with type O blood. So when we're picking our answer, we're looking for number 1, number 4, so we pick answer B for this one. All right, so that one is solved fairly straightforward as long as we write out the genotypes of all the parents involved. Let's look at one more example. All right, here we have a pedigree chart, and this involves more than just blood type. We're also dealing with sickle cell anemia. We're told some information here. It says that shaded individuals have sickle cell anemia and are homozygous for the defective allele HBS. So what this is telling us is that individuals who are HBS have sickle cell anemia. The normal allele is HBA. So HBA is normal. What we don't know is, do carriers have sickle cell anemia? Because there's a possibility that we could have an HBA and an HBS, but what it tells us is that carriers of the allele are not identified in pedigree. So there may well be some in the pedigree chart, but they're not identified. All right, we also know something about blood types. It says individual 3-1 has blood type A. 3-1 has blood type A, so this individual right here. This individual also does not have sickle cell anemia, so that means this individual 3-1, is either homozygous or heterozygous, but not HBS. So if this individual has blood type A, well then we know that his blood type is going to be big IA something. And because we know that he doesn't have sickle cell anemia, he's going to be HBA, and that could be another HBA or it could be an HBS. So really all we need to do here is find something that fits that pattern. So take a look at A. A fits that pattern because there could be a little I here, there could be an HBS here. B does not fit that pattern. I'm sorry, B does not fit that pattern because that individual would have sickle cell anemia. C can't work because this person would have AB type blood, and it tells us that the blood type of individual 3-1 is type A, so we can't have that. But here's an interesting situation because D fits the pattern. If this is a big IA and this is an HBA, well then that fits the pattern too. So it looks like we have two potential answers. Well, here's where we're going to have to use the pedigree chart to figure things out. We can eliminate one of those answers once we look at the parents of individual 3A, because the parents of individual 3A, 2-1 and 2-2, if we know their genotypes, we might be able to narrow down what 3-1 might have. So for individual 2-1 does not have sickle cell anemia, which means we're HBA something, which means the HBA that this individual possesses could have come from this parent. We don't know that it did, but it could have. Now, the other parent, individual 2-2, well, this individual is HBS because this individual has sickle cell anemia, which means this individual has only an HBS to give to individual 3-1, which tells us that we can now fill in this allele as an HBS. So we know that one's an HBS. We still don't know what this one is. But now we can at least eliminate one of our answers. We can eliminate answer D because D does not have an HBS. So that leaves us with answer A. That's the only one that will fit. So this is a good example of integrating a pedigree chart with blood types and with another disorder that you may not have heard of before, but they've given us enough information to answer this.